Hello, and welcome once again to the Frankencast. I'm the mad scientist, Anthony Bowman. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm joined as always by...
the naughty little rat boy, Eric Velasquez. My pronouns are also he, him. Orlok mentioned that Eric was a naughty little boy, so I was like, you know what? Let's go with it.
Sure.
Let's do it. There was either this or the zombie bandmate, I don't know. Or the bartending mummy.
There's a lot of good options in this one. A lot of nice, weird background characters, which is what we love.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So, if you couldn't tell already, we already enjoyed the hell out of this movie.
Yeah, if commentary tracks aren't your thing, you may have not. I might have skipped the last thing, but yes. So I guess it'll be about a week ago when this episode comes out. We watched the movie live and did an audio commentary track and saw our kind of got our initial reactions. And yeah, like you said, I enjoyed it even more than I expected to, and I've since watched it 2 more times, once without commentary and once with Rob Zombie's commentary, not ours, obviously. And yeah, I think I like it more each time I watch it.
Honestly, yeah. This is the gift that keeps on giving. So I'm in for it.
Yeah, it's just, as you rewatch it, there's just, you catch more little details in the background, things this is definitely made by a fan of the Munsters. And
right,
I mean,
exactly.
What more can you ask for?
Well, I mean, we have characters that only pop up in one episode of the old show, but they're still brought into this. We have Uncle Gilbert. We have the robot. Who else do we have?
We have Lester, which we haven't gotten to in our watch, but apparently Lester does show up in one episode of the Munsters that I don't remember super well. But so we'll get to see him again later on our Patreon watch through.
Okay, so I don't know if you were a big fan of Red Dwarf, which is a British sci-fi comedy show back from the 80s. So
yeah, I've seen a couple, but I'm not super familiar with it.
All right, I'm just going to say Lester has big cat vibes, okay?
Okay.
So if you know the character Cat, Lester is bringing a lot of that energy with him on this one.
Okay.
And I'm here for it.
It starts out, we get an old school Universal logo. It's not the one from the original Frankenstein, but I think it is the one that they used in Bride and maybe The Invisible Man. It's a good classic era one. And I did see in the commentary, Rob Zombie was Universal basically I could use anything Universal owned. And I got to choose which opening credit or opening title card, and he was like, that's the one I wanted. That's why, of course, you get all the Abbott and Costello movies, and you get the Mummy and stuff. Is that he had the rights to do those for free, so it was kind of nice that he was able to make use of those.
I feel like if they gave him a blank check, he underused it. Either that, or they're you've only got a couple slots here you can use up, buddy, and then we're cutting you off.
Yeah.
Or the whole movie would have been throwbacks to old monster movies, probably, with no
zombie. Right. And I know one thing that a lot of people complained about when the original trailer came out was people were disappointed that it wasn't in black and white. Mm-hmm. And apparently that was a studio thing. He was nobody was going to give us the money if we try to do black and white. But that's why you do get a lot of nice black and white scenes here and there. You get when Herman's introduced on the TV, well, obviously we'll get to here shortly, but there's some scenes where he was I was able to cheat and get some black and white in there and have it make sense for the story.
Right. But if got some black and white cartoons at the later part of the movie.
Right. And he was if I couldn't do black and white, I was going to do color to 11, and he definitely did that. So good on him 11, for that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get this party started.
But yeah, so the movie starts. We're in a graveyard. It's a very Frankenstein type scene. We got a lot of fog.
Bats.
Yeah. There's no flappy bats. They're all CGI in this. But
not yet. We kind of get one later.
Yeah, yes, that's true. But yeah, it's very classic. Wolves howling, fog. And then you've got your mad scientist, Dr. Augustus Wolfgang, or Henry Augustus Wolf. Yes.
Right. I was calling him literally everything but his appropriate name. I was calling him Dr. Wolfgang, Dr. Augustus. Well, I guess Wolfgang would have been right, but Augustus, and then Henry Augustus Wolfgang.
Yeah. So just, a nice mashup of a bunch of different Frankenstein names. And then, he's joined by his assistant, who will learn his name, Floop.
Played by, well, let's talk about Henry Augustus Wolfgang. Richard Brake, an amazing actor and Rob Zombie alumni. All right. Every scene he's in, he's going to be chewing that scenery. Like, this guy devours the scenery that he's in. Okay? Then, of course, Floop, played by Jorge Garcia from Lost, if that's still a thing. These characters are some of my favorite. I could just watch them do their thing for hours. Like, if they decided to go back and do a legitimate, or at least semi-legitimate Frankenstein movie, maybe more of a comedy kind of like this, just with Augustus Wolfgang and Floop, I'm there for it.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have big young Frankenstein energy. Like, they kind of bicker at each other in a really fun way. Richard Brake is definitely channeling Peter Cushing kind of Frankenstein more than the
right.
Universal, but it works. And then of course, Floop is basically a Fritz. He's a very traditional, but he's mouthy. He's arguing with Wolfgang, and then he kind of gets a turn. When
he's definitely Fritz by way of Igor, right?
Right, exactly, yeah. And when Herman kind of moves into his attempt at celebrity, Floop is there for it. He's instantly in a gold lame Elvis Presley suit. He is, he's ready for the bright lights and everything.
Yeah, he's the manager.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a comment on managers or what.
Yeah, I guess that goes back to us talking about how, in a way, Fritz makes the monster into the monster, and so maybe it makes sense that the hunchback assistant would be the, manager of, Herman's career.
Right. Of course, he makes him more of a ham than he already is, right?
Yeah.
All right, so what happens? We've got the doctor, we've got Floop, we get a crypt door. They're walking down. We see this coffin.
Yeah, there's it's just one of those empty crypts with a single coffin in the middle of the room, and they are breaking it open. Meanwhile, we see there is a zombie stumbling through the cemetery.
Right. I think you're probably not. Well, I can't say that. It's kind of obvious it's a zombie. There's from the back of the head. It's the way it shuffles. It's a zombie carrying a suitcase.
Yeah, and really quickly, I mean, if you didn't catch it, he turns and faces the camera, and he is a decaying corpse.
Right. And we get the title card, Munsters.
Yeah. And so apparently, a fun little fact, I'm not going to fill this with Rob Zombie commentary facts, but this I thought was really fun. So the physical actor playing that zombie is one of the original Teletubbies. Tinky Winky is the zombie.
Amazing.
But then the voice is one of the guys from the band Cinderella.
Right. Fred Cowrie, right?
Right, and he's apparently they decided he should do an impression of Angus Young from AC/DC. So
amazing.
There's several layers of metal guys involved in the making of this, and then also a Teletubby.
Right, exactly. Well, also the zombie, we find out his name is Pennywhacker.
Yeah, so that it turns out that is the guy that they're trying to dig up. They open the coffin, it's empty, and then he shows up and is hello, chaps.
Right.
What do you do? He's a very polite, formal zombie. Mm-hmm. Floop is very curious. He's so do you guys for real eat brains? And he's yeah.
Oh yes, I enjoy a nice grilled cerebellum with a side of chips.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
But then Wolfgang just brains him with a little hammer.
It's oh, hello, bang!
So he's I want his phalanges, because he's a great pianist, and Floop does not know what phalanges are, but he's sure, okay, let's do it. And then we get a really funny bit with them where they have to take a picture first.
Right, for some reason. We
get
different poses.
Yeah, he keeps trying different poses, and Floop's what else you got? I'm not liking that one.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And so they get a nice photo, and you get the freeze frame still of the photo on the screen. Then we cut to we see a different coffin that is in a Gothic castle. You've got a very Munsters scene basically, and there's just this single coffin, and it opens, and out pops Grandpa, or the Count, as we'll call him in this, because he doesn't have any grandchildren
yet. Yeah, that he knows about.
Right.
Because, I mean, I feel like Lester has a couple pups, you know?
Yeah, I'd believe it. They do a great bit, and this bit kind of becomes like a running thing where, like, every time we're introduced to one of the Munsters, the first time we see them, they are scary and intimidating, and then something silly happens to undermine that. So, you know, he gets like the Nosferatu kind of deal where he just rises up out of the coffin all ominous, and then he like tweaks his back and he's like, oh, ouch, oh. And so, you know, he has to like call for Igor to come help him because he's like, when you get my age, everything stops working, and I mean everything.
Right, you know, once you hit
a nice little dick
years.
joke.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Igor, played by Sylvester McCoy, the last Doctor Who from the original run.
And Radagast, if you're into the Hobbit movies, which I don't know too many people that are into those.
But he's like, yeah, I've heard that that's the case, you know, and he kind of helps him. And then they start talking about that, you know, Lily is out on a date.
With Count Orlok.
Yeah, Count Orlok, who is also played by Richard Brake. And, you know, Grandpa's really confident. He's like, this is going to be a love connection. He's a total package. He's also rich.
Right.
I think
he's
like,
handsome. He's a swinger, which I didn't know was a thing to, like, I guess he means he's good at dancing. And he's loaded.
Yeah, because this is definitely like, feels like it's set in the 60s. So, yeah, I think swinger is more like a hip guy rather than like, you know,
People with
an open marriage. Yeah. So, you know, he's excited about that. And then we cut to the date. And it's kind of the same deal. Lily comes like rolling in. It's like she's clearly on like a dolly or something because it's just like this perfectly smooth
glide
entrance. And she's got like in this pose. She's in like a Vlad the Impaler kind of, you know, Romanian looking outfit, like lots of like fur and lace and everything. Mm-hmm. And, you know, fog rolling in. And then we also see Orlok, who's is Nosferatu basically, and he looks very creepy as well.
Right, but by contrast, she's dynamic, whereas he's static, and that makes him creepy, just as it makes her creepy. Like he's not moving he's barely twitching.
Yeah, and then when they like get to each other, then it gets into like date stuff, and it again like undermines the scariness. Mm-hmm. Like he forgets her name. He's like, oh, it's hard to remember all the girls.
Right. Apparently he gets around.
Yeah, and then like he further emphasizes that because they get to a restaurant. And she's like, have you been here before? And he's like, oh yeah, I go every night with my date. And so like he is clearly like having trouble making a connection, and we'll see why.
Well, even the mummy's like, hey, you want your usual table, bud?
Right. And the restaurant's great because it's all Egyptian theme, and it's, you know, all the waiters are mummies. You know, I think we talked about this a little bit in the commentary, but it's really nice because you see something like Count Orlok is so meticulously well done, and then the mummies look a little cheap, and it's like, it's clear that it's, you know, Munsters cheap. Like it's intentionally, it looks the way it does on purpose, I think.
I'll have to agree with that because, as you said, there's a lot of good makeup jobs, but there's a lot of bad makeup jobs, and it's like either they knew where to spend the money, and they were like, we won't spend so much money on this, but I think it still makes it look good. Like it's there's a lot of hyper color going on here.
And it's kind of the thing where it's like you watch like old monster movies where you can see the zipper on the monster suit and stuff, and there's a charm to that. And I think that like it's an intentional nod back to that kind of charm. You know, like we probably could have CGI these mummies and made them all decayed and have chunks of, you know, like exposed ribs and stuff, but instead we're just gonna put people in masks and kind of
suits.
Yeah, and I appreciate that.
Well, even going back to that, like the vampire patrons, I'm assuming they're vampire. There's they wear old outfits and they're probably undead of some form. But even their makeup looks pretty good, and their outfits look pretty good compared to the mummies that are just masks.
Yeah,
or even the zombie.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they sit down to dinner, and you know, they like the mummy comes with their food pretty much right away.
Okay, now this one was like really, because it looks like Richard Brake's like straight up eating like maggots and millworms.
And apparently all of the food in this movie is real and edible, and it's all vegan. So I don't know what that was, but it was some sort of probably soy something noodles, or I don't know, but like, yeah, it looks gross, it looks real, and he's really eating it. So they did a really good job with that.
Well, I hope he had a good meal out of the whole thing. Because, yeah, he really went to town, and obviously this is one of the, I would say strike number 2 as far as Lily is concerned, the first one being that he's a player, and she didn't seem too enthused about that, and then he's just kind of digging in and just eating like a, monster.
Yeah, so. It's very sloppy, and then right after that, that's when he asks, or they talk about that his only interest on the dating profile was that he likes the Black Plague.
And pestilence.
Yeah, and she's like, isn't that the same thing? And he's like, yes, and I love them both equally.
Love it.
Yeah, and so to further emphasize how much he loves the Black Plague, he's also obsessed with his pet rats. And he...
aforementioned one being Eric.
Right. And he pulls out, this being sort of timeless, but kind of in the 60s. Obviously, he doesn't have a phone. So he pulls out like a big stack of like Polaroid photos.
Huge
and just
stack.
And he goes through and show like he's this one he's a little chubby and like this one likes to sleep on my pillow, and he's just going through this whole big list, and Lily is absolutely bored.
Right. Yeah. This is definitely strike number 3. If I think he gets up to 4 or 5 strikes.
Right.
Before this is all said and done.
Yeah, but she's definitely bored, and then we see like kind of like a Romani camp. And there's a werewolf who's sort of like stumbling in a weird way. Like he's not moving naturally.
I think we even said the zombie walk effectively.
Yeah, and then we'll quickly realize that the reason is that he has been sort of hypnotically compelled to come here by Zoya, the leader
Krupp.
of this. Yeah, she's like the sort of boss of this camp, and it turns out
she's a mob boss, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. As we'll go in, we'll find out she owns a bunch of clubs and everything. So yeah, I mean, it pretty much is like she's the godfather,
godmother.
Yeah,
but not the fairy kind.
And so we'll end up finding out that this werewolf is Lester, the son of the Count and brother to Lily, but he's been compelled to come here because he owes them money.
Right. Zoya and Bella.
And, he's like, I promise I'll get you the money. It's just going to take me a little bit longer. But also, why do you have a picture of my dad on the wall?
Right. The Count's face in a heart. So it's like, oh, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah. And she's like, don't worry about that. That's from a long time ago.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
It'll be a plot point. So
then we cut to the castle.
And Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde meets Abbott and Costello.
Yeah, and the Count is loving it. He's, laughing hysterically. And then the phone rings, and it's one of those deals where he's like, Igor, get the phone. And it keeps ringing, and he's like, fine, I guess. I mean, it's not like I'm the Count or anything, but I guess I'll answer my own phone. Mm-hmm. And he does, and it's Lester. He's trying to, he's like, I'm here with this lady. We got a deal. If you sell the castle to her, we'll be set for life. It'll be this whole big thing. And
the Count's not hearing it. He's like, okay, son, you got about 2 seconds to...
Yeah, he's not interested. He basically just hangs up on him. Mm-hmm. Then Lester's like, I guess you heard that. And Zoya's like, yeah, but you still owe us money, so...
Sounds like it's big trouble for little Woof Woof. I love that she calls him that, by the way.
Yeah.
It's like, I wonder what's going to happen to him if they make a sequel. All right.
And so then we cut back to the date, and we get this, another bit that would, if we hadn't already established these characters as being kind of silly, this would be a really ominous scene, because we've got, Orlok, this creepy-looking vampire, and he keeps leading Lily further and further down dark alleys, and you're seeing all these kind of shady businesses. It's like fortune tellers and massage parlors and stuff. It's all this kind of neon and everything.
Well, that's at least until he tells her to close her eyes, and he puts on a little background music.
Yeah. Yeah, so she opens her eyes, and he's doing this terrible awkward dance to this techno song called Disco Vampire.
Right. Disco Vampire.
Yeah, the lyrics are basically just disco vampire, sexy. That's the whole song.
Well, not only that though, apparently over his house he has a sign that says, if this tomb's a rockin', don't come a knockin'. If he's telling you his intentions.
And Lily's immediately like, all right, I'm gonna go. And he's like, oh, okay.
But okay. Can we say that once he finishes his Disco Vampire song, it's literally, I don't know if it's a glitter cannon or someone literally just grabbed a handful of glitter and threw it.
Yeah, it's one little handful. It's not at all spectacular, which is what makes it perfect.
Perfect. So good.
And so then we cut back to the castle again. The movie the Count's watching gets interrupted by like a breaking news bulletin. And what's the
Donna
news?
Doomley, played
Donna
by
Doomley.
Sherry Moon Zombie. By the way, there's a lot of actors playing double duty, if you couldn't already tell.
Yeah, pretty much all the main characters play at least 2, if not 3 roles. And I did see, like, I was curious about, like, why they made that choice. And part of it was sort of utilitarian because they filmed this during COVID and it was really hard to get actors to where they were filming, I think, in Budapest. And it was just difficult getting American actors, and they tried to get British actors, which would have been easier, except none of them wanted to go because of the COVID quarantine stuff. So they were just like, I guess we're just going to have to, the show must go on kind of thing and just fill in. And then like he was kind of like, it kind of actually worked. Like it made it a little bit sillier in a way that worked for what we were doing.
Yeah, I think most of the main cast does 2 jobs except for Jeff Daniel Phillips, who plays Herman. He also plays Zombo, and we're going to find out about this guy named Shecky von Rathbone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which is so this news bulletin is that this comedian, Shecky von Rathbone, was killed by hecklers.
Well, they ate him alive. Literally.
So yeah, that's what you get for doing bad comedy. Mm-hmm. She also mentions that he happened to die like the day after his brother, the brilliant scientist Shelley von Rathbone.
Right, and they make a definite point that Shelley is a genius and Shecky is an idiot. Can you tell where this is going?
Right, and no one would possibly ever mix the two of them up because it's very obvious one is super smart and one is super dumb, but they both are currently laying in state at the Dewdrop Inn funeral home. So then pretty much immediately from there, we see the neon sign for the Dewdrop Inn funeral home. And we've got Wolfgang and Floop who arrive. And Wolfgang's like, you go on in and get the brain of Shelley von Rathbone.
Get the brain of the second smartest man of our age.
Oh, right, because, yeah, he's all like, and, he's like, why don't you get the smartest man? And he's like, because I'm still using it, tapping his forehead, So, Floop writes down Shelley on his hand, which is a nice little nod to Young Frankenstein, and goes in and, he like is looking through, like looking at toe tags, and he's like, there we go. And so he starts going to work, and then the camera pans over and we see the toe tag next to the guy he's working on says Shelley von Rathbone.
So it's obviously got Shecky.
Yeah. So then we see the doctor's lab for the first time. I think this is where we see all of his like keep out signs in front that like escalate. It's like
eventually.
The last one is like we're tired of burying the bodies. Basically. Right. But like this lab set looks so good. They're like rolling in the corpse on a slab and everything. And at first we just kind of get like distance shots, and then so this kind of goes into this whole like montage thing where it's like we see that Lily is sad and lonely. She's like going to bed. She's listening to this album called like Music for the Miserable, which happens to have Boris Karloff as the mummy on the cover, and she's just kind of crying in her little like lace coffin bed,
sadly brushing her hair.
Mm-hmm. And it's kind of this thing where she's mournful because she just can't find the man of her dreams. Meanwhile, we're also watching Wolfgang and Floop making the man of her dreams.
Her dreams, yeah.
So it's a nice like that montage really worked for me.
Yeah, it was really good. It was one of the sweet moments of the movie.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out, however, that Dr. Wolfgang's going to ruin that because he wants to name the monster something spectacular, something amazing. He wants to name it Uranus.
Yeah, he's like, it's all kind of the new modern Prometheus, so it makes sense. Floop's like, you're going to just make his life really hard naming him Uranus.
Yeah. You can't take a monster seriously nowadays if it's named Uranus.
Right. And so, of course, the doctor's like, oh, really? So what great name do you have in mind? And he's like, I don't know. What about Herman?
Right. Of course, the doctor's like, what the fuck? Why Herman?
Yeah. And he's like, I don't know. I had a pet spider named Herman. He was pretty cool, so I think it's a good name.
Yeah. What about his last name?
And he's like, how about Munster? And he's like...
Wait, you can't name him Monster.
You're going to name the greatest scientific achievement of mankind Herman Monster?
Right.
And he's like, no, Munster, like the cheese.
You know what? I'm okay with that name, that scheme.
Yeah. Yeah, this sort of like, retroactive explanation for the name is much better than the one from the Han Solo movie, I'll say that.
Yeah, no joke. Jeez.
And so then we just kind of roll right into the revival scene, and it looks great. There's like all kinds of lightning. There's no spinning science wheel, but there is still a lot of cool stuff going on. You get like a big wall behind them that's just all computers that I think we mentioned looks kind of like the one in Santo and Blue Demon meet Dr. Frankenstein, I'm pretty sure.
That sounds right to me.
But then there's just all kinds of test tubes. There's fog, a lot of electrical looking things. Above them, there's this giant sort of like green eye that's sort of like the focus that all the lightning's passing through. So it's just really big and epic in the way that you want this kind of scene to be.
Well, not only that, it's epic in the way that Dr. Wolfgang like kicks it off. Let's make history, Floop!
Yeah, and as we said, he's chewing the scenery everywhere, but particularly this scene, he's dialing it up even more.
Well, hey, at least he's sharing a little bit of it with Jorge Garcia this time.
Yeah.
They both get to chew a little bit.
Yeah, they're just yelling over the crackle of all the lightning and stuff. So it's just it's very big. Mm-hmm. But then once it all stops, the creature's just still laying there, and the doctor kind of puts his stethoscope on his chest, and he doesn't hear anything. And he immediately just starts like weeping, and he goes and puts his head down at a desk and is like, "I'm such a failure." He's all upset.
Right. By the way, once again, playing a card He hams up the tears. It's so good.
Yeah. But then we hear Floop yell, "It's alive!" And it's like, oh, okay, but maybe everything's okay.
Turns out, no. That's just his pet cockroach Ernie that he thought was dead.
Which obviously makes the doctor mad, and he smashes the cockroach, but he's still okay. He's a very hardy little cockroach, which, that's kind of the thing with cockroaches, right? They're pretty hard to kill. So then the doctor kind of he starts monologuing about how this is a failure, and this was going to be the greatest achievement mankind ever saw, and then you hear a yawn, and he's like, "Oh, am I boring you, Floop?" And then we see Floop, and he's points over next to him. He's like, "It wasn't me." And sure enough, there Herman Munster, the monster, has risen up and is all wrapped in bandages, more like you see the bride wrapped in that movie.
Now, not only that, I do love the fact that they gave him, instead of the standard black platform shoes, these are solid white platform shoes to blend in with his bandages.
Right.
It's so good.
And he's, his face is even covered. He's kind of stumbling and groaning and everything.
He's got some Moon Knight vibes, I'll say, if you've seen that show.
Right, yeah, I can see that. Wolfgang is like, don't speak, just save your voice. It's okay. We'll get there soon.
Yeah, we're going to show you to the world.
Right. So, this is bad science. You need to be test driving your creation before you show it to the public. But
he'll learn his lesson.
Right. So we cut to there's a morning show going on.
Good Morning Transylvania with Ezra Mosher, aka the guy who plays the Count. Data Roebuck.
Yeah, so the Count and Lily are watching. The Count's still like, "Lily, you should give Orlok another chance." He's, kind of pressuring Lily to kind of go on another date. And she's like, "No, I'm not into it." And so then we, we're seeing the morning show on in the background, but the camera goes to focus in on what's going on the morning show. And, it's Wolfgang, and he's there to show off his new creation.
Well, not only that, he's apparently there to say a bunch of expletives to the scientific community. Especially about performing coprophilia and looking at his, I believe, rosy little beep.
Yeah, they use a cuckoo clock sound, and it's pretty great. And this whole bit, because it's on an old TV, this part's in black and white, so we do get some black and white here, which includes the first reveal of the unbandaged Herman. We get to see him in black and white. We also see that Lily is instantly just head over heels in love at first sight of Herman. We get these sort of heart projected behind her that's kind of cartoonish.
Well, it's swirling around as well, like it's on a wheel or something that's being spun.
Yeah, yeah, it's real cheesy, but it's really cute. So Wolfgang's like, all right, say some great words, do some. I think he says like physics or something, like enlighten us with philosophy or something like that.
Well, his first one is we're going to perform on the piano. Right.
Yeah, so like the creature's kind of groaning and stuff, or Herman, then like sits down at the piano and like at first like cracks his knuckles and kind of puts his hands delicately on the keyboard like we're gonna actually get something, and then he just starts pounding it in that way that Herman pounds on things. It just obviously decimates the piano, and then he's like, oh, okay, speak, tell us something, and he like gets out a little like spritzer bottle and like sprays his throat like he's like got to loosen up his vocal cords.
And and then he starts performing stand-up.
Yeah.
And then Grandpa's like, I would hate to have a stupid blockheaded son like that in my family.
And Lily is just like really, really into Herman right away. I would say the one thing that took me the most to like really get into is like this portrayal of Herman. Like the voice is very different and the mannerisms are kind of different.
And the attitude.
Yeah, he's definitely, which I think kind of works, the attitude, because he's very full of himself, and it feels like, because Herman does have like a really like good self-esteem in the show. That's kind of like an ongoing thing. He thinks he's very attractive and all that, but like I think that this is like Lily tones him down over time, so it would make sense that now he's not a jerk, but he's like on the line of like being a little bit too full of himself.
Right. Yeah, I'll agree with that. Because he's like, hey, I'm a 10, Everybody else is like 7s at best.
Yeah, but the one thing that is 100% dead on from the original is the laugh. Like, when he laughs, it just sounds like Fred Gwynn laughing. Like, he just nails it.
But also, Igor's into this as well. He digs Herman.
Yeah. So, you can tell that he's, like, in support of Lily, like, finding happiness here, and, the Count is not having it.
The Count's so angry that he's like, hey, Igor, I want you to turn this off. Did you notice, the first time I watched this, when we watched it together, I didn't notice this, but he literally loads his hand like it was a pistol. Like it was literally a handgun.
Oh, like he was going to do magic on him?
Like he was going to shoot the TV with his fingers,
That's pretty good, because later on, he does kind of do that at the very end of the movie.
Right, but Lily's like, whoa. I'm going to need you to calm down there, buddy.
Yeah, is that when she, like, does she get the red eyes at this part? And she's like, don't touch the dial.
Right, don't touch that dial. Oh, no. And then she zaps him, and he's like, oh, I'm going to put it away now.
Yeah. Then we're in the dressing room after the talk show, and Wolfgang is all upset. He's ashamed. This is such a failure. He's been humiliated in front of all the viewing public and everything.
Right. By his dancing baboon.
So he's like, I'm gonna go away and live with the lepers.
Right. I must away to live with the beasts and lepers of darkest Zanzibar. Don't know what that's about, but okay.
Yeah, so he leaves, and so you got Herman still not named, but he's talking to Floop, and he's like, Floop, could remind me one thing. I'm having trouble remembering what my name is.
By the way, did we mention that he has bunny ears, a balloon animal wrapped around his head, and Groucho Marx glasses? Because he does.
Yeah, so he's definitely having a good time backstage. I'm digging through odd props and stuff, I guess. And so Floop's like, okay, picture this in lights. The greatest performer in the history. Like he kind of does.
Yeah, the history of show business.
Yeah, Herman Munster, which then cuts right to Herman Munster in lights, on a marquee. So that's a pretty great little jump cut.
Right, and then we get to hear some of Herman Munster's tunes interspersed with some of his jokes.
Yeah, he's doing this really interesting thing where it's kind of like this sort of like sloppy garage rock music, and it'll just be like a guitar riff for a bit, and then it'll kind of get quiet, and he'll tell a joke, and he's like, oh yeah, and then the rock guitar kicks back in. The thing, I think I mentioned this in the commentary, it really reminds me of that song United States of Whatever.
Right.
Where because it's like he talks and then there's like the guitar riff thing, but it kind of works. Like it's kind of a good song. Like it's a pretty good song.
Yeah, like that's one thing about Rob Zombie and his movies. The soundtracks are always banging, right?
Oh yeah. And I think pretty much all the music in this, like he co-wrote with the Zeus, who did like all the score stuff. So they must be friends or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, they definitely. All the kind of weird techno songs, which there are like 3 or 4. I think they did those all together as well.
And those are mostly like one-line things. So I feel like you could probably mix them all together into a pretty good song.
Yeah, so we were talking, and I was like, man, if they make a soundtrack to this, I'm going to buy it. And apparently they are, and it looks like it's beautiful. It's all like really nice deluxe edition. So I did pre-order it. So I'll see how they put that together in terms of all those songs. But
it doesn't say Yowza Baby.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, by the way, he's in a leather daddy outfit with a skeleton t-shirt.
Right. It's the outfit that we usually see him when he's like racing the Dragula. But since, this predates the Dragula, obviously that doesn't work. So yeah, got the leather cap, got a leather jacket with all kinds of like studs. He's wearing that skeleton tee, and then Lily is watching this whole performance from like the back of the club, and she is like,
she's digging
like. Yeah, she's into it. Like, she's like, kind of like biting her lip. And so, like, it feels like the little, like, go to horny jail meme needs to come out and, like, bonk her. Because she is, like, yeah, she's down.
Yeah. DTF, as it were. Down to Fang.
Right. Yeah, and so then we cut to Zoya, and she's like backstage at this club, and Lester's being dragged in. So it turns out, as we mentioned, she owns rock clubs. So
he even mentions that. I didn't know you owned the damn club, or owned the club too.
Yeah, he said, because he says, I didn't know you owned this joint, and she's like, Zoya owns many joints. But they're like, basically, if you don't give us the money, you've got like 2 weeks, you're dead. And he's like, no, that's not a good deal. And then they like knock him on the ground and like holding a hatchet over his head. And he's like, all right, I will get the money. I promise. I'll figure it out.
Then we get a really cool like cut or a sweep where it's actually an axe coming down. And I thought that was pretty cool. We also get the songs Microbat, Megabat.
Yeah. And so then we're seeing like that swipe comes and cuts to the dressing room where Herman is after the show, and he's like, I'm not sure if I don't know if my act is working. Like, I don't know if people are understanding my art. And, Floop is just like, but you're getting more famous. Like, that's all that matters. We're not worried about art. Like, the honey babies are showing up, and he's like, but I don't want honey babies. He's like, I'm looking for, so Herman's looking for the love of his life as well. So, and there's a great bit where like Floop's like, just don't rush it. Rome wasn't built in a day. And he's like, yeah, but I was.
Exactly. I believe Floop asks Herman to take a break, and then Herman's like, I'll show you a break, and he breaks the guitar, and then he just yells at the mirror and cracks it.
Right, because Herman's got to break some mirrors.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so then we see Lily, she's trying, she's headed backstage trying to find Herman. Meanwhile, Lester is trying to leave the backstage area to, get away from Zoya.
Because he's only got 2 weeks.
Yeah, so he's in a rush, but he takes the time to talk to his sister, mainly just because he's short and, he could use $20 if she's got it. And he's like, if you can spot me 20, I can tell you how to find, I'm good friends. Me and Herman go way back.
Right.
And so, she gives him the money, and he's like, actually, he's somewhere back there. Just, you're going the right way. Just, maybe it's the last door on the left or the right. It's a dressing room. You'll find it. It's fine.
But we also see the Herman Munster Yowza Baby poster for the first time with the big bugged out eyes.
Yeah, it's got all this like neon drawing stuff. Like, it looks like a Rob Zombie album cover, like some of his more recent like psychedelic looking album covers.
Yeah, I mean, and as we mentioned, Lester's going to be her bat wingman.
Right. So Lily goes, she finds the dressing room, knocks on it. And at first, like, Floop answers, and he's like, just, you can go outside in the alley with the rest of the groupies. But then Herman, like, throws Floop out of the way, and he's like, oh, hello there.
Yeah, I mean, he sees her, and we get the heart swirling again, yeah. So he instantly falls in love with Lily at the same time.
Yeah. And so she's like, she's like, I'm a big fan. I wondered if you might want to get dinner. And he's like, oh, let me check my schedule. And he does that whole bit where, like, he's trying to play it cool, so he, like, closes the door on her, but then you're seeing her, her viewpoint, and like you can hear him through the door, like celebrating, and she's like kind of smiling, like, all right, this seems to be going well. And at first he comes back once, and he's like, I think I can make room. What day were you thinking? And he's looking at this little tiny calendar that just says Herman and Lily with a big heart around it. And she's like, what about tomorrow? And he's like,
tomorrow, okay. I'll schedule you in. Yeah.
And so he closes the door again, and he's like, hold, please. And he starts, you can hear him like jumping up and down and like, tomorrow. And so yeah, Lily's feeling pretty good, and yeah, he comes back out, and now he's got like a bigger calendar. with tomorrow circled, and it's got like
I've moved some stuff around. We can make that work.
Then he closes. He's like, "I'll see you then," and like kind of still trying to act cool. It closes the door, but then you again hear him like celebrating through the door.
Yeah, she walks off, obviously knowing she's got him. But by the way, this is the smoothest Herman Munster has ever been.
Yeah, that's. It seems more like again with them sort of like being single and him being a little bit more full of himself than he will be down the road. That like, this is definitely the most confident, and as I think basically like as he realizes that like Lily's the real one in charge, and he's just like I'm good with that. That works for me, and just kind of settles into like his happy domestic life with Lily. And this is kind of the story of getting to that in a way.
Yeah.
So I think then we see this bit with Herman and Lily both getting ready for the date separately. Herman's trying on outfits for Floop, and Lily's trying on outfits for Igor.
Right. So Herman's dressed up like a pimp from a 1970s like exploitation movie.
Right. Giant hat, big feather,
big H, gold H.
Yeah, giant gold necklace, big fur coat, huge platform shoes. I think his pants are leopard print. It's just like, it's the most over the top.
And Lily just looks like a girl that went to a rock show at the CBGB or whatever.
She's wearing a shirt from Herman's band, the Punk Rods.
Yeah.
And she's like deciding between two dresses, and it's like, I don't remember. It's like lizard skin something or other, and
then what is it? The spiderweb dress.
Right.
Spiderweb silk.
And so she's kind of trying to figure something out. But he's like, I want her to know that I'm really cool, but like I don't want to be like too over the top. But so we don't really see him choosing outfits. It looks like he's going to show up in this pimp outfit. But then
no, he chooses a better one.
Yes, 100%. So it cuts to him like on his way to the date. He stops at a little cart that is selling flowers and blood, which works out because he needs flowers for Lily and blood to make the Count happy. So he splurges and gets some
let's talk that he's wearing the wild man outfit from Son of Frankenstein.
Right, yeah, and which is, pretty much what he wears for most of the rest of the movie. And it's the big fur vest and the platform boots and everything. Like, this is a really good look for Herman.
Oh yeah, but as you mentioned, he gets lilies for Lily. And O negative for for the Count.
Yeah. Then we like get this bit of him like walking towards the castle, and it's that pre-date like psyching yourself up thing where he's just like, you got this, Herman. Like we're cool. We're gonna impress everybody. This date's gonna go great. He does some dances. He's like, back it on up, Herman. Back it up. And meanwhile, like Grandpa is up on top of the castle watching all this play out.
And he's like, this moron.
Right. And then we get like this great bit where like Grandpa and Herman are having a conversation from, very far away from each other, just yelling. But like Grandpa eventually like vampire super speeds down to the door.
He's like, I'll be right down. Then all of a sudden, zoosh, and he's right at the door.
And he's like, all right, come on in. And Herman is still yelling. And he's
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he's like, why are you yelling? He's like, I thought you liked that.
Right.
So then he goes in, and we get another bit that's sort of, even though we've already, had like the spooky Lily entrance undermined, we get another sort of like serious Lily entrance where she kind of comes in, all this fog rolling down the steps. She's in this like pose, so she's just looking really good. And you've got like Herman and the Count down at the bottom of the stairs, like looking up in awe at the beautiful Lily.
Right. And of course, Lily immediately breaks the dramaticness with, oh yeah, by the way, I made curried scorpion casserole for dinner tonight.
Right.
And that pisses the Count off because he's like, wait a second, I've been asking her to make that forever. And this guy shows up and she just makes it. What's up?
Yeah. Then we just kind of cut to the dinner, and the Count is like kind of complaining the whole time. Herman, this is probably like,
this is a burn.
Herman, at first he's like really bragging about himself. He's like, this is probably like the least likable version of Herman, is like this first part of the dinner, and he's like, I don't know what to say. These songs that just come to me. I'm just brilliant.
Yeah.
But, Lily's like, but not he's not just a pretty face. He's also a brilliant comedian. And the Count's like, all right, well, tell me a joke. And then we get this really good diss from Herman.
How do you keep a grouchy old broken down vampire in suspense?
And he's like, I don't know. How do you keep a grouchy, broken down old vampire in suspense?
I'll tell you later. Damn.
Yeah. So from there, it's pretty much like, Lily's like, all right, let's go on a walk. So they head out. And they're kind of walking through a graveyard, and Lily's like, that's one of my old gravestones there, and that's like...
Right, she has multiple of those.
Right. This is where you start to I think Lily starts to kind of break through the shell that Herman feels like he needs to put out into the world, and he kind of becomes the more likable Herman that will grow to know and love over the series.
Yeah, because at this point, Herman's basically like, I just kind of want the Count to like me,
Yeah, and she's like, it's one of those his bark's worse than his bite, but she's like, he's not gonna, or she says he kind of goes for the jugular, and he's like, metaphorically, but it couldn't hurt to wear high collared shirts around him too, because he's the Count. Mm-hmm. Then we hear we get this little moment with Igor and the Count where they're just like, Igor, we've got to put a stop to this. I can't have my Lily marrying this buffoon.
And then we cut back to them, and they're talking about how they want to live just a normal old life together.
Yeah, and this is sort of set to, it's another loving montage that is set to them singing "I Got You, Babe." It starts with them at a karaoke kind of place, and they're dressed up
like Cher and Sonny Bono.
Yeah, and
Herman sounds like Sonny Bono as well.
Yeah, it's great because Lily has a good singing voice and sounds like Cher, but then he's squawking and terrible, and it's perfect. Mm-hmm. But we get them at karaoke, but then it cuts to all these other sort of montage moments, and the song kind of carries through. They're at Devil's Island, which we've heard in the show. They previously mentioned that that's where they honeymooned. So it kind of, makes sense. Herman's in a Devil's Island swim team, old style, full body swimsuit.
Is this where they meet Uncle Gilbert, or is that?
Yeah. This montage goes on a while. Yeah, they do meet Uncle Gilbert, and again, this is one of those bits where it's it's a really good mask of the creature, right. But it is not. It has no animation to it. It is a mask.
Clearly a suit. Yeah, a mask.
Yeah.
And he even shows them his favorite movie that he acted in that one time.
Yeah, he's got 3 posters on his wall. It's the 3 different Creature from the Black Lagoon movies, and I think they're watching the first one. Mm-hmm. But they're all kind of eating popcorn together and having a great time.
Oh, we did skip over where they get tattoos of each other. Well, Herman just kind of gets Lily's name on him, and he's crying and sobbing. And Lily gets a full face portrait of Herman on her back, and she's just this is whatever.
Yeah, it's pretty great. There's kind of just a lot of little romance. This scene, I mean, it just builds the romance between them.
It's very sweet.
Yeah. Meanwhile, before we get to them having their picnic, we go back to the Count. He is. Or no. They do propose first. I'm trying to there's a lot going on here, but yeah. So Herman ends up proposing to Lily at their little picnic, and he's very nervous, and it's
on the beach of Devil's Island.
Yeah, and there's a little moat around them with a shark fin going the whole time. Mm-hmm. It's just great. But yeah, he's like, Lily, will you marry me? And she's obviously an instant yes.
Herman, you've made me the happiest girl in the world.
And the engagement ring's this huge
spider,
gaudy, it's pretty great. And then that's when we see at the castle the Count is working on a husband spell.
Right, when he busts out his book, everything you ever wanted to know about magic spells, but were too afraid to ask.
Right. And he's turning the pages magically, not touching the book. Mm-hmm. And he finally, he gets to the husband page, and it's one of those old school grandpa spells where he just uses various items from celebrities to kind of create something.
Well, also, though, he has to do this because he doesn't want his Lily marrying a quote-unquote stitch job from the wrong side of the tracks.
Right.
Damn.
Yeah. But it's And all the references here are like, very dated, sort of intentionally. So it's like chest hair from Tarzan to make him manly, dancing shoes from Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly, and John Wayne's cowboy hat to
give him a little bit of swagger.
Yeah, and the cowboy hat still has John Wayne's toupee in it. And then he adds like one little drop of some sort of final concoction stuff and like explodes, there's this big smoke rolling out of this cauldron. Then we get the husband that he created, and it is a monkey in like a dancing outfit with a cowboy hat on.
Right, wearing like the rhinestone cowboy kind of outfit as well.
Yeah. So it turns out that he accidentally used Cheetah, the monkey from Tarzan, instead of Tarzan. So he messed it up, and he's like, all right, I guess that win some, you lose some. He says it's time to shuffle off to Buffalo.
And that's what the monkey cowboy dancer guy does.
Yeah, he just kind of like dances off stage left and is gone. So then I think we get Herman goes back to tell Wolfgang and Fluke.
Back. He came back from the leper colony.
And all he got for it was a t-shirt and leprosy.
Gee, I wonder if you go to a leper colony if you get leprosy.
And the only reason that he got the t-shirt was because they lost his luggage. So he had a bad time.
Yeah.
But yeah, then Herman shows up and he's, there to tell him the news, but he kind of like, he tries to play it coy and not tell him the news at first. And so Floop's like...
Floop's being a bro and he's like, that dirty fang banger.
Yeah, he assumes she said no and like, he's got Herman's back, but he's talking some shit about Lily until he's like, she said yes. And Floop's like, she said yes? And then they start yelling, she said yes, and jumping up and down and shaking the whole house.
Yeah, of course Wolfgang's like, whatever, man.
Yeah, he just pulls out the TV remote and like turns up the volume. He's watching Leave It to Beaver. Then we get to Lily showing up at home and, to show off her ring. And the Count is like, not excited about that. He gets a rear projection thing, but instead of the swirling hearts, it's just like this sort of hypnotic effect as he like passes out and falls over.
It's so good. So at this point, we're actually at the halfway mark. It's the wedding day. We get a nice old timey hearse in the back of a coffin in the back of an old timey hearse.
And apparently these hearses like this. It's a really strange. It almost looks like a golf cart. Like it's a really small front end, and then just got this huge back end with a coffin in it. These are still used today in Hungary. Like apparently there was one at a cemetery that Rob Zombie wanted to rent, and they were like, we use it every day. You can't have it. So they had to build one to look just like the one because they just fell in love with it.
Right. That's amazing though that they're like, listen, man, we use the shit out of this thing. We can't just let you have it.
I hope Rob Zombie was like, you can keep this, have a spare or something when they finished.
Right. Of course, we got some play doctor looking dudes there for some reason.
Yeah, and like at first, because we see the Count fall, and then we see this, and there's a coffin and everything, and they're kind of letting you think that maybe the Count has died, but pretty quickly it's revealed that this is the way that Lily is making her grand entrance to the wedding. So they like stand up the coffin and open it up, and she comes like ethereally floating out of the coffin.
Well, also at this time, Lester introduces himself to Herman.
Right, and he's like, "We're practically blood. I'm Lily's brother, so I got a great business deal for you." And Herman's like, I'm going to let Lily handle the finances. I don't really have a head for numbers.
Right, and he tries to buff him up with bravado, and he's like, no, you're the man of the house, right? And then Herman, of course, falls for it.
Right, because Herman's still kind of on the fence here, where if you feed into Herman's ego, he's definitely going to, be easily swayed.
But you know what? Good on him for knowing his weaknesses and being like letting Lily shore him up.
Right. But yep, so he's fooled here, and Lester gets him to sign this paperwork to sign over the castle, which he doesn't know that's what it's for, but we do.
He just thinks he's going into business with Lester, whatever that business is.
Yeah, so then we get to the actual wedding. Herman and Lily do their vow exchange.
She comes out looking like Queen of the Damned?
Yeah, she's got this really elaborate headpiece that almost kind of mimics the Count's head. Like the Count has like these kind of swirly kind of wings of his hair, and her headdress kind of like echoes that in a way. The wedding's being officiated by the Tin Can Man, which is just absolutely the robot that Eddie makes in the Tin Can episode.
Maybe he reincarnates him. Who knows?
Well, and fittingly, he's voiced by Butch Patrick, the actor who played Eddie. We have seen him once or twice in background shots, but this is the first scene where we really get a lot of dialogue from this robot.
Right.
Lily and Herman do their vows, and Herman's are kind of goofy, and Lily's are very sweet.
Well,
as you would expect.
let's not skip over the fact that every time she mentions something with Herman, we hear a tightening noise. We don't know what that is. It could be the bolts on the side of his neck are tightening, but it could be other things tightening too.
Right. And Herman's are like, I want to boogie oogie oogie with you till I can't boogie no more. Yeah, like he's just goofy, but it's sweet. Like they're playing up to their strengths, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the robot starts to pronounce them man and wife, but like glitches out, and Herman like punches him, and he like finishes, but catches on fire.
Well, the Tin Can Man actually asks, "Are there any objections to this marriage?" And Grandpa starts, and Lily just turns around and zaps him with her eyes.
Oh yeah, and he's like, "Nope. Yeah, congratulations, happy for you, good luck with everything." Yeah, so then like, we have Herman and Lily, walking out post-wedding kind of thing. It would be like the rice throwing kind of scene, except they're just kind of leaving out the back of the church. Meanwhile, Dr. Wolfgang is drunk and talking to the Count and is like, he's your bloody problem now, mate.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, I feel like if I ever met like Richard Brake in real life, he would smell of whiskey.
Oh, for sure.
All of his characters, I imagine, they're all whiskey-drenched individuals.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, I think this is our last scene with him.
Yeah, sadly enough.
Yeah, he was such a nice addition to this, but it's, as he said, Herman's
bloody problem.
Yeah, so he's moving on, and then we see Herman and Lily. They're driving away in kind of an old-timey car that says like, "We got hitched" on the back, and they happen upon Lester, who's just like also drunk, wandering down this like path in the middle of the woods, and he kind of like lets it slip that him and Herman are going into business together.
Yeah. Hey, partner.
Yeah, and Lily's like, "You did not give my my idiot brother money, did you?" And Herman's like, no, we're just we gotta play, it's business, And she's like, I hope that I did not marry a blockhead.
Right.
And, she did marry a blockhead.
Right, dumb enough to go into business with her brother, yep. That sums up Herman all right.
So then we see Lester meeting Zoya and giving the deed over, and they give him like this really small payout, and he's like, isn't this worth more than that? And she's like, you owed us money, then we took our cut, this is all that's left.
Right.
So and he's like,
as a mob boss, they're screwing him.
Oh, absolutely. Zoya's like heavy that stands behind her. He's like, next time you learn not to mess with Zoya. And he's like, I'm not, you're never seeing me again. I'm taking this money to Vegas. I'm going to quadruple it.
Right. I'm taking the money to Vegas and quadruple it. What a plan.
And so it's like, yeah, of course, Lester's going to blow all this money and be back to square one, because that just seems like what Lester would do.
And of course, they're like, stupid wolf.
Yeah. And then we get like the honeymoon montage, which is Herman and Lily in Paris.
Herman's in the stereotypical like striped shirt with red bandana and beret.
Yeah. The beret says Herman on it. Like, it's just like, he just is a giant child. They, there's some bits where like they're talking to each other, and Lily says like some actual French, and Herman says French fries.
Right.
So they go to a cafe and like end up scaring everyone at the cafe, and we get some like sped up scenes where everyone runs away. There's a mime who like collapses. There's a guy who like,
he tears his own heart out. Technically, I mean, he mimes it out, of course, but
right. There's like a waiter who like sprays a bottle of champagne all over some people. A lady faints into a bowl of spaghetti, and then there is a guy who's reading a newspaper, who's played again by Daniel Roebuck, and he drops the newspaper and runs away, and Lily picks up the newspaper and sees the headline that a monster is haunting the sewers of Paris.
Yeah, we have the actual like face shot of the monster. It looks like a dragon.
Interesting. Yeah,
it's weird.
So they're like, that sounds like something we would enjoy. Let's go down there. So
right, let's just go hunting for monsters.
Yeah. So they're down kind of wandering through the sewers of Paris. They get to a point where there's like a steel gate that they can't get through, so Herman has to, knock it down. And then they get to like this sort of reservoir of water, and Herman goes diving in,
Right, we hear the monster noises.
Yeah, and they do really, like, Herman's off camera, and you just see Lily kind of, like, looking a little scared for Herman's safety, but mostly, like, into the fact that Herman can wrestle a monster. She's kind of, like, biting her knuckles and stuff. Like, it's almost like that, is it from Wolf of Wall Street, that meme of, like, Leonardo DiCaprio biting his knuckles?
Hand,
it feels kind of like that.
Right.
And
well, not only can he wrestle this monster, like he can, apparently, like, makes it submit, because now it's just like a little floppy rubber thing in his arms.
Yeah, it's clearly just like a completely inanimate rubber dragon that he's kind of like using, he's kind of wiggling it with his own arm, to kind of try to make it look alive. It's like those little like toy weasel things that people used to get when you were kids, and you kind of like flip it around your fingers and make it look like it's alive.
Right.
Then we cut back to
Grandpa reading a Playghoul.
Right. Playghoul magazine, and he's like looking at the centerfold, and apparently, to add just one more multicasting thing, the pinup girl on the cover of Playghoul is Sherry Moon Zombie.
Makes sense.
Apparently, it's like an old photo that was from like a Rob Zombie album cover that they didn't use. So he was like, "Well, I had this pinup picture of her laying around anyway. It works." So
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. So, he's flipping through that, and then Igor shows up with a letter from Zoya.
Yeah, Zoya Krupp again.
Yeah, and Grandpa's like, that name kind of sounds familiar, but I don't remember.
Yeah, you were married to her, turns out.
Right. So, yeah, he opens it up, and it is, proof that Herman signed over the whole castle, and that they're being evicted.
Yep, she even calls him a peasant now.
Yeah. So obviously Grandpa's not happy about that. And then we cut back to Herman and Lily at like their hotel for the night.
Yeah, they're getting ready to, honeymoon stuff.
Yeah, right. So Lily's in the bathroom. The dragon is in the bathtub.
Yeah.
They're talking through the door. They're like, "What about Spot? That seems like a good name." They're like, "Yeah, he looks like a Spot."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure does.
And so like Lily, she's putting on lingerie, but it's like very PG lingerie, obviously. And then they get a knock at the door. Herman goes to answer it, and he's like, "It's probably that champagne I ordered from room service."
Right. And of course we know it's now Grandpa, or the Count, and he's going to use that champagne to brain Herman.
Right. And like Herman's not paying attention, so he opens the door, sees a bottle of champagne being held up, takes it, closes the door.
Right. Snatches it right out of the Count's hands.
And then you get this moment where Herman's like, "Wait." And you think like, oh, he just realized that it's, his father-in-law outside. But so he opens the door and then like puts a coin in his hand and is like, "Merci," and closes the door again.
Herman's not a bad customer. He definitely tips all of his servers.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out that's not the one you want to tip, because Grandpa comes in and he's like, "Yeah," and Herman's like, "I fucked up."
Right. And so then Lily comes out like, she's like, "I'm ready, Hermie baby," or whatever. And then, for a second the Count's like, oh no, it's my daughter. But then, it's like she's just wearing like a full nightgown, so it's not like that weird. He's like, "Your idiot husband here, we're basically homeless at this point. He gave away the castle." Immediately, Lily and the Count are like, "Okay, we got to figure out what to do."
I know this guy. He's named Shady Magoon.
And Herman's like, yeah. Herman's like, "I got a plan. I'm just going to go sit over here and hold my breath until they give us the castle back," because he's a giant child. Mm-hmm. Clearly, like Lily and Grandpa or the Count are like, their plan is going to be what's going to work. So then we cut away to them. They're back at the castle. They've still got the castle for a little bit.
Right. Now we get the introduction of Zombo, played by Herman's actor.
Yeah. So his third role. Zombo's kind of like Bozo the Clown, but as a zombie.
Zombie witch.
Right. Yeah. So originally it was like Eddie's show that he watched in the original series, but here he's like, hawking some like cereal. It's like crumbly creature crackers, and he mentions that this is filmed in Hollywood, California.
Well, this is about the same time they find out that Shady Magoon can't help them. He's like, "You're screwed."
Yeah, Herman's watching cartoons while Lily's talking to a lawyer, which again is perfect portrayal of both of them. Mm-hmm. And yeah, Lily's like, she's like, he's talking in like, I think he's speaking Hungarian, maybe.
Right, but he's doing it from prison.
You just hear her being like, "Okay, shark, okay, lightning, And like she's just saying little, words here and there, so we don't really know what's going on. And then she hangs up, and he's like, so he basically said we have as much chance of winning as we would of getting struck by lightning while bitten by a shark on leap year or something. It's just like completely impossible. There's no way we're gonna win. And Herman's like, well, I got a plan. We should just, we've had our time here in Transylvania. Let's move to Hollywood.
Right.
I think we can, become famous there. If this
Look at Zombo. He's clearly a 7. I'm a 10. Come on. We'll do
which
great.
is great, because it's the same actor, right? But, and so he's like, that's where we're doing. And Lily's like, okay, I guess we could try it. And instantly the count goes from like, being annoyed with Herman and like you're, an imbecile to being like, you wouldn't leave your dear old father-in-law out in the street, would you?
I do like what Herman says. He's like, fine, you can come, but you get one box and you leave that freeloader Igor here. And then he goes, no offense, Igor. And I love Sylvester McCoy because he's like, no offense taken.
Yeah. And so then Grandpa's like, that's fine, I can handle that. So then we see Grandpa kind of packing up, and he's got a potion that he's putting together that he's going to give to Igor. And Igor's like, are you sure about this? I don't know, because like I could just stay, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, Lord Grimsby is canvassing for a new pool boy.
And the Count's like, Lord Grimsby doesn't even have a pool. Igor's like, that doesn't make much sense. Okay, that's fine. I'll go with you to Hollywood. And he gives him the potion, and he's like, bottoms up, Igor. And Igor's like, that's what Lord Grimsby said.
If you didn't get the gay joke, that's the gay joke.
Yeah. As far as gay jokes go, I don't think it's like at the expense of the gay community.
No.
I think it's just kind of a silly little gag. So sure, that works. And Igor drinks the potion and immediately turns into a Flappy Bat.
Well, right before he does it, he's like, oh, this isn't working at all. And then poof, Flappy Bat.
Right. A Flappy Bat that specifically has Igor's sideburns. He has like really big bushy sideburns. So yeah, it's so good. Meanwhile, Lily is talking to a realtor on the phone to kind of prepare things for when they get over there.
Yeah, Barbara Carr, but her voice is really familiar.
Yeah, if you're not a super horror nerd, you may not recognize Cassandra Peterson because she does not look like what you're used to seeing her as Elvira.
No, not at all. Yeah, she is Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Yeah, but here she just looks like, she's got like curly red hair and like a business suit, like a pink checkered sort of like business dress kind of thing.
Yeah, she looks like your realtor grandma.
Yeah, she's like, I've got one house in this neighborhood. I think it's perfect. Everything else it's selling like hotcakes, but you got this one last one. And Lily's like, well, why hasn't that one sold? And she's like, well, it's fine. There's one thing we got to straighten up to make things perfect in the neighborhood, but this house, you'll love it. It's great. Yeah. So she's like, oh, but also when we meet, don't get too shocked because I'm headed straight from the office to a Halloween party. So I'm going to be dressed up for Halloween. And Lily's like, what? I don't know what you're talking about, but sure, that's fine. And, she's like, she's telling the family, like, I guess she's worried about her looks. And, they're like, oh, women, that's just how they are.
And then, of course, we find out that they're now going on Flight 666 because, of course, they are.
And we get the whole family. They're in the front row in first class. And first class is just totally empty. And so apparently the flight attendant moved them to first class and then moved everyone else into the back of the plane because no one wanted to be near these, scary monsters.
Well, not only that, but we get another familiar voice over the intercom. I believe that's Pat Priest.
Yeah, so she was the second Marilyn, the main Marilyn. I think we have one Marilyn for like the first 10 episodes, and then the remaining like 60 something are Pat Priest.
And Herman's getting hammered.
Right. He's like falling, he's like all slouched down in his seat, and he's like, these drinks are so good. And he's like, oh, can I get another one of these drinky poos?
What do you call them?
And she's like, it's a Shirley Temple.
He's getting smashed off of Shirley Temples.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so when the flight attendant comes back with it, she hands it to him, and she's wearing a helmet and a large backpack. And Herman's like, flying's the safest mode of transport. You don't need a helmet. And she's like, okay, sure. Yep. And then she like heads off camera, and then instantly the cabin depressurizes and she has jumped out.
Oh, we forgot to mention Grandpa is also wearing Igor as a hat.
Right. It's like he's wearing like a top hat, and Igor's kind of like strapped to the front as like, a decorative thing, which is, a really nice touch. Mm-hmm. But even though though somehow the cabin was depressurized, then we just cut to the plane landing safely, or it has landed safely at LAX, I guess, or whatever it would have been at the time.
Right.
And we get more Pat Priest as the announcer, like the whole thing where it's like, the temperature is now whatever. We hope you enjoyed your flight and all that.
Yeah, Bomb 76 and all that, yeah.
Yeah, and so then we just get to the Munsters arriving at the realtor's office, and she is now dressed as a witch. Her face is painted green. She's got the prosthetic nose and chin and the pointy hat and everything. It's the Wizard of Oz witch, basically. Right. But then when she opens the door and sees the Munsters, they're obviously even scarier than her, and she faints.
Right. She does the quick, her eyes cross, and then she stumbles back a little bit and falls down. Mm-hmm. Which is always a nice touch.
Yeah. But then when she wakes up and she's like, I'm sorry, I wasn't expecting you all to be in costume too. You just caught me by surprise. And they're like, costume?
Right.
And she's like, oh,
you the spirit of the day,
Yeah, so they're, we're already, now that we're in California, we're getting into like the meat of like the Munsters style humor of like the fish out of water and the miscommunications between like the Munsters and the regular people.
Right.
So she's like, all right, I'll take you to see the house. And then we get this great sort of like animated montage.
It's a nice cartoon music video, let's be honest.
Yeah, so like we've got like the live action Munsters in a real car, but it's kind of like green screened and it's like flying around this animated backdrop of like landmarks around California and Hollywood, and we get the Hollywood sign and some stuff like that.
And I think they even run into UFOs at some point.
Yeah, right, yeah. And so then when the montage ends, we're at Mockingbird Heights, and it's this like quaint, like Leave It to Beaver sort of neighborhood. Everything's just pristine and perfect, but it's also decorated for Halloween. So we get cookie cutter houses, but spooky stuff everywhere. There's cobwebs and skulls on things and jack-o'-lanterns everywhere.
Well, we even get a Crypt Keeper laugh as one of the little skulls turn.
Yeah, and it has to be really John Kassir, because it's dead on. It's either actually him or they were able to use a recording of him, but either way, that's got to be him. Yeah. And obviously the Munsters are like, yeah, this neighborhood looks like our kind of place. Like we're really liking how this is going. And the realtor wants to show them the house, and she's like pointing to one direction, like, look at this, it's beautiful. It's got just, and then we cut to the Munsters, and they're all looking in the opposite direction. We see that they are looking at a rundown Gothic mansion, 1313, obviously, with like weeds all grown up and cobwebs and everything,
and of course tombstones.
Right. Yeah. And Barbara's like, what are you? No, this house here, this like pastel house, is pretty.
Right.
Then the family's kind of whispering to each other, and they're like, she thinks we just fell off the turnip truck or whatever. Like
Well, the garlic truck is what Grandma says.
Right. Of course, the garlic. And so he's like, we can't be bamboozled by Herman. You got to stand up. So he's like, listen here, we're not going to go for that house. We want this one right here.
And sold. You got it.
And it's this great bit where like Herman is not expecting her to back down so quick, so he's like, no, don't you interrupt me. We demand this house here. And she's like, all right, fine, take it. And he's and Lily's finally like, Herman, like you won. Right. You don't have to keep arguing.
By the way, so at this point, did you notice the biplane? I know I mentioned that there was something on the biplane that I couldn't see. I actually saw it today. It is a ad for Gateman, Goodberry, and Graves.
Okay.
The funeral parlor.
Yeah, which we'll get some more from them here momentarily. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so she's like, the house is yours. If you want to do whatever with it, when do you want to move in? And they're like, now. Mm-hmm. And then that pretty much cuts to the family. They're in the house now.
Right, just sitting around.
Yeah, they're all kind of squeezed into this. It's like a love seat that's not quite big enough, especially when Herman's in the mix. Mm-hmm. But so like, what do we do now? We're broke. We've got this house, but we got nothing. And they're like, I guess we're gonna all get jobs. Especially Herman. Herman, you better get a job because
he's like, I'm the man of the house. I have to get the job.
But then they hear some noises outside, and they're like, what? It sounds like a witch
burning.
Yeah. So they step outside, and it's a Halloween party, but they don't know that. It just looks like a party as far as they're concerned. Mm-hmm. So they go out, and we get all these great, it's a party montage. You get the family sort of mingling with the neighborhood. Everybody's dancing. Everyone else obviously is wearing masks.
Right. But we also get the song Vampira.
Yeah, and it's a good mix of like some really kind of old school traditional like Don Post style masks, and then some like really creepy, weird homemade looking masks and stuff. Everybody's having a good time. Then we meet Gateman, Goodberry, and Graves, these three guys, and I'm still not sure, even watching it a couple times, if they're supposed to be just they're actually this creepy all the time, or if they're being creepy for the Halloween party too, because they're all kind of dressed like pilgrims, sort of like all black, like little stovepipe hats.
Yeah, it does leave a question. Are these guys actually ghoulish, or are they just normal guys who had a little bit of fun?
Yeah, because they're singing this song that's kind of monotone about Gateman, Goodberry, and Graves, and they do make some like kind of ghoulish jokes about. It's one of those like people are dying to get into our place of business kind of deal. I can't remember exactly what it is, but
something about the cold touch of death. Everyone experiences the cold touch of death,
and only the Count laughs, and they're like, "That was a joke," and then everybody laughs.
Right?
Yeah, it's still unclear if like they're joking, like what the level of joke there is, but it's fun anyway. But the reason they're on stage is that they're there to announce the winner of the costume contest, which turns out to be the Munsters.
Well, it's the Monsters.
Right. Yeah, they say the Monster family, and like so the Munsters are all looking around, and they're like, "Wait, everybody's looking at us. Did we win something?" And Herman's like, "It's probably a beauty contest. I mean, it happens, everywhere I go, And so they all go up on stage, and they get like a novelty giant check that's for I think $1,500.
$1,500, yeah.
And it has a little cartoon Frankenstein drawing on it,
which is always nice.
Yeah. So they're all feeling good. Then we get more party montage scenes. Everybody kind of dancing and everything. And meanwhile, Gateman, Goodberry, and Graves pull Herman to the side, and they're like, "We'd like to offer you a job." And they like hand him a business card, which is coffin shaped. Herman's like, "So mainly I'm a comedian. I do like performance." And they're like, "No, we work at it's a mortuary. You're just going to be like dealing with dead bodies." He's like, I can dig that.
Hey.
But so there, everything looks like it's coming up for the Munsters, and the family heads back to get ready for bed. And,
well, yeah, as they're going into the house, Lily mentions that the neighbors could talk your ears off, and that immediately makes Herman want to check his to make sure nothing fell off, because his glasses would look really weird.
Right. So then we've got like Lily and Herman. They're up in their bedroom. Lily's watching The Mummy. So we got Karloff on screen. Herman is practicing bowling because he's already ready for league night at his job. Like he's
prepping.
And he manages to lose control of the bowling ball. It breaks through the wall, revealing a skeleton that falls out.
And the jaw falls off. I mean, obviously a serial killer lived in this home.
Right. And so then we cut to like the next morning. Everybody's kind of like getting ready for the day. Lily gives Herman his like comically large lunchbox that we've seen in the original show. She's like, "I left you a little surprise in there." And he's like, "Are they cookies shaped like Mickey Mouse?" And she's like, "You'll see, it's fine." The Count's like, "Knock them dead." And he's like, I'm pretty sure they're all already dead.
Yeah.
And he's like, "We better check to make sure."
Right. Always double check to make sure. So Grandpa emphasizes on double tap.
Right. So then Herman goes outside, and then we get like this. It's like a reverse horror sequence because like Herman, there's all these the way the camera is panning around, like it looks like we're in like the Texas Chainsaw House or something. Like the camera's telling you scary stuff's happening, but what we're actually seeing is like basically Leave It to Beaver. You've got like. Yeah. This cute neighborhood, everybody's in like pastel cardigans. There's like
some cute little girls with their selling lemonade.
Yeah, you got like moms with like little, baby strollers. You got like couples riding bikes together. It's
so of course this is terrifying.
Yeah, and Herman like it cuts to Herman's face, and he's like looking around like, "Oh my god!" Like it looks like he's in a haunted house or something. Mm-hmm. So he goes rushing back into the house. He's like. He starts yelling like, "Lily, hurry, come 54, quick!"
Where are you?
Right.
We've heard that joke before, but it never gets old.
Yeah, like that gag is like that. This is made by people who love the Munsters because, this is a singular joke from the Munsters that's pointing back to a reference to the fact that Fred Gwynn and Al Lewis were in this show together. So yeah, it's definitely a reference that. Probably most people who watch this movie are not going to get, but it's nice that it's there.
Yeah, 100%.
So Lily and the Count show up, and they're like, "Clearly you're overreacting. Everything was fine last night."
Yeah, this was a nice neighborhood.
Yeah, so they step outside and they both kind of look horrified, like
They bite their knuckles like Leonardo DiCaprio.
yeah, in a different way this time. It's like, oh no, what have we gotten ourselves into? And like, the Count's like, where are all the hotties?
Because Grandpa
Right.
or Count.
But so, Lily takes them all inside and she's like, it's what's inside that counts. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
like,
good for Lily.
yeah, like this feels like we're kind of getting set up for like them taking Marilyn in and caring for her, even though she doesn't seem attractive to them. And this is the point where we kind of get the Grandpa and Herman relationship that we're used to, where like they're kind of in cahoots and they're kind of idiots and Lily has to wrangle them,
Well, he
So,
even
like,
calls him his favorite son-in-law now.
Yeah, and they're sitting together on the couch, and like Lily's kind of standing over them, like, you two, we gotta be nice to our neighbors and everything. Yeah, she says what's on the inside that counts, and then Herman's like, well, then I need X-ray glasses because I can't take looking at this outside.
Right.
But then there's a knock at the door, and they're like, oh no, more scary neighbors. What are we gonna do? Lily gets up, and they're like, okay, Lily, you take care of it. And her eyes get red, and she's like, you come with me.
And they're like, your wife is terrifying.
Yeah. And Herman's like, I know. And that I know is definitely like it's like I know she is, but also like, I know.
Right.
Like,
I know.
I'm into that. Yeah. Then Lily opens the door and you see like Grandpa and Herman kind of like peeking around the corner, like they're a little scared to see what's there.
Well, it turns out it's a friendly neighborhood werewolf.
Yeah, so they're like, Lester, what are you doing here?
Guess what? He took all that money to Vegas, and instead of losing it all, he made a killing. Somehow he like quadrupled all of his earnings.
Yeah, so at first like they're like, we ought to knock you out for losing the castle, but then they're like, okay. So he like shows Herman this check that we never actually see what it says, but Herman sees it and he's like, I'm rich.
Right.
Not we're rich,
I'm
but
rich.
And so Herman's jumping up and down. Lester, in addition to the check, also just has
money.
has a stack of money to like make it rain. So he's like throwing money in the air while they're all kind of dancing and jumping around.
Yeah.
And then we cut to the credits, the original, like a remake of the original black and white credits, which this movie still feels like it kind of just like runs out of steam at the end a little bit. But I do feel like the ending with the credits is the perfect way to end it, because if this is a prequel and we're leading up to what we've seen, then it makes perfect sense that the last thing we would see is the first thing we would see watching an original episode of the Munsters.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, and the black and white looks great, and it's we don't have Eddie or Marilyn obviously, but we get Herman breaking through the door, leaving a Herman-shaped hole,
right,
and then Lily kind of popping through.
By the way, it must have been cold that day. Do you know how I know that? Not from what
everybody's
you're thinking.
breath.
Yeah, their breath. Exactly.
Yeah, I noticed that. Everybody's like breathing fog as they come out. And like Lily's wearing her like sort of like, it looks like the lining of a coffin, I think maybe what they're going for, but it's the thing the cape that she wears in the original series. And Grandpa comes out with a shovel and like first, he's holding it long ways and can't fit through the hole, and then turns it tall and is able to walk through. And then we get just the Munsters logo, and that's how we end. And then we get like, instead of we get sort of like the Marvel end credits thing where it's like this sort of like neon animated musical number.
Yeah, We Are the Munsters, the song.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, it's sort of a mix between like the Munsters theme and like the Monster Mash, basically. It just tells us the story of the Munsters. And yeah, it's this cartoonish thing where like Herman's playing his like rock guitar.
Lily's playing electric harp, or just regular harp, really.
Yeah, and you've got Uncle Gilbert on the drums. I can't remember what is Grandpa playing the bass?
I feel like he has to play the bass.
Yeah, and you just get the whole song with like a little bit of like the big title credits. And it goes through the whole song, and that's a kind of a nice way to. Wrap up the movie too. Yeah. And then a nice little like final touch also is, I wish more movies did this, because it's so like when we get to just like the credits scroll, instead of it just being black, it's just a shot of the house that like very slowly zooms in just a little bit over the course of the credits
with like actually creepy music.
Yeah, just like kind of ominous music. And I don't know, it makes me want to watch the credits more, like, because if it's just a black background, I can just kind of like zone out and I'm not paying attention.
Something going on behind it.
Yeah, then it's kind of like, which I think gives the people who deserve that credit, the gaffers and the caterers and stuff who like we don't know or pay attention to, at least they're getting their sort of moment in the sun where we can see their name,
Yeah, absolutely. That's pretty much where we cut off on. So here's my thoughts. One, Lester could have been a really shitty character, but he actually turned out to be really great. And he's basically moving the whole plot forward. Like, this one werewolf is driving the movie behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, he leads them to California and then helps set them up so that they're comfortable.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. And he even introduces, by accident, Lily and Herman.
Yeah, true. Yeah. And I think the trajectory of the story, it really does kind of build into Herman and Lily's relationship. Like Herman starts out, he's not entirely likable, but he gets more so as the movie goes. And it's really as Lily sort of brings out the better side of him.
Right. 100%.
I think that Lily was definitely my favorite character on first watch, and I think she still is. Like, I just really like Sherry Moon Zombie's portrayal of Lily. Like, I think she really got the spirit of Yvonne DiCarlo, like the sort of slightly nervous movements and stuff.
Right.
Herman, it took me a little bit more to like appreciate because it's a different portrayal, but I do think it works. It took me a little bit to like get into the groove of like this version of Herman.
Right. Well, I got to follow my favorite couple, Floop and Dr. Wolfgang. They were great additions.
They really were. They're a lot of fun. And I don't know if there will get more of this. Like, I don't know if there will be a sequel to this or not. Right. I kind of feel like probably not, knowing how like the movie landscape is just so weird and messy right now.
Right.
But if there is more, I doubt we'll see more of Wolfgang and Floop, but we'll definitely obviously see more of the main trio and possibly Eddie and Marilyn.
Right.
And I would definitely love to see that.
Right. And of course more Lester, because Thomas Boykin, we didn't give him credit in the beginning, but he's also kind of a zombie alumni to a degree, 3 from Hell. But yeah, man, I mean, werewolves, that's my thing. So
right.
So there you go.
It really feels like a love letter to the Munsters.
Yes. Rob Zombie definitely watched a lot of the show, and you can tell that.
I saw an interview with him where he was talking about that, like, basically the Munsters was like the first TV show he ever saw. He's like, as soon as I was aware of TV, the Munsters was on in my house. Like, that's my earliest memories are watching these like black and white shows, and I've loved it ever since. And it led me into horror, which led to House of a Thousand Corpses and all that. And
well, hell, it influences music. Dragula.
Right, of course, yeah. And apparently this movie has been off and on in the works since House of a Thousand Corpses, which was originally a Universal picture, but then it was too gruesome and they like sold it off to Lionsgate.
Yeah, that was a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, but apparently if they had liked House of a Thousand Corpses, this movie may have come out many years ago, but basically they were like, yeah, we don't really want anything to do with you right now.
Right.
And so they kind of backburnered it. And then I think there was 2 or 3 other times over the course of those couple decades where like Rob Zombie kind of got his foot in the door, but then like the rights got reverted to somebody else, and he just kept like, he was like, by the time this one rolled around, I was just like expecting the rug to be pulled out from under me at any moment, but it actually went through finally.
Yeah, that's interesting because, I mean, we had this discussion on our commentary, but it's like Rob Zombie isn't the best when he has full control over his own projects. I mean, his own music, yeah. It feels like he needs to be constrained. And it feels like there was someone here like, yo, we can't do that at points.
Yeah, and I think not only just the constraints of the studio, but just the constraints of like, I'm making a movie for
kids,
family viewers, and I want to honor this thing that I loved as a kid. Yeah. That sort of, by the nature of the project, there were constraints put on him, and I think that it served him really well.
Yeah. I even said, I believe that this was my favorite zombie movie, Rob Zombie movie.
I think that, yeah, I can see feeling that way. Like, at this point, I've watched it 3 times, which might be the most I've watched any Rob Zombie movie.
Right.
I might have watched his first Halloween movie 2 or 3 times as well, because I tend to watch all the Halloween movies pretty regularly. Yeah. But like House of a Thousand Corpses and those, like, they're good, and I've watched them maybe twice each, but it's kind of like I don't really need to see them again. Like, I get it, But this one, it's joyful in a way that is more likely that I'm gonna pull it off the shelf and throw it on for fun, and
especially around Halloween.
Absolutely. So yeah, I definitely see this one being more in rotation than any of his others for me.
And here's something interesting. So the last time we watched this, the one we watched together, the commentary, We actually had went over Rotten Tomatoes, and no, that's not obviously a be-all, end-all metric, but it is a small form of measure. And I believe we said it was at, like, what, 33%? Mm-hmm. Well, just in the last couple of days, it's risen already to 42. So I have a feeling that this one is going to be a cult favorite.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's definitely got cult favorite energy in my book, so.
Yeah. And that, like, if it gets a little bit of a following, a little bit of, groundswell support, Netflix is very mercurial. They will cancel a show out of nowhere, but they'll also, like, let something run way longer than you expect them to. So if they think that they've got the audience, this could possibly, get another movie or a show or something, and that would be incredible. I would love to see where Rob Zombie takes the family now that they are a family.
Right, exactly. And another thing is, I do appreciate the fact that the so when this first came out, I think we were mentioning that it seemed like Grandpa was going to be the antagonist, not just a antagonist. And he wasn't even really that much of an antagonist in this movie. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I kind of like that. And also the shit I was spouting about how wild and crazy it would go. I do appreciate that he toned it down and didn't go so wild and bloody. Of course, we did have a kill. I mean, the kill was already dead, but
the zombie kill at the beginning, yeah.
So you can't go.
It really feels like Herman and Lily, you've got these sort of two disparate things coming together to make this like perfect family, and it feels like you take this family friendly show and you take Rob Zombie, this horror creator, and it just works.
Yep. And honestly, if they do mention that, okay, Rob Zombie's just going to do a regular like show with episodes, I'm there for it. 100%.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Any more thoughts?
Yeah, I think that covers it. We've now talked about this for almost 4 hours between the two episodes, so clearly we're pretty fond of it, and I highly recommend it. And of course, it's on Netflix. This is, we talk about a lot of obscure movies that you really got to work to find. This one's super easy, so if you're still on the fence about it, you've spent more time with us than it would take to just watch the movie. So
twice,
just watch the movie.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun. It's everything I could have hoped for it to be, basically.
Yeah, 100%. All right. In that case, where can they find us, Anthony?
You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at The Frankencast. You can email us at frankencast@gmail.com. You can also find us at patreon.com/thefrankencast. And of course, we've got lots more Munster stuff over there and a lot of other things as well. We're having a lot of fun there. So yeah, we definitely would love to have you join us there if you can afford to do that for $3 or $5 a month, basically a cup of coffee. We think it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the very least, just stop in, just say hey. Any interaction is good interaction, so as we always say.
Yeah.
Hey, Anthony, you know what I'm missing? Could we go back to the well of Abbott and Costello? Maybe something preferably in Spanish?
Yeah, so, we kind of have been doing this sort of like end of year anniversary thing, kind of trying to do some things to call back to what we've done in the past. And we figured what better way to do that than with the Mexican remake of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Because obviously Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein was one of our early movies that we had a lot of fun doing. So we thought, now's the time to kind of go back to that well. It's called Frankenstein, Vampire and Company is the English translation, or,
Frankenstein el Vampiro y Compañía.
Yeah. So it's a really interesting, kind of fun, seeing the humor from the American version sort of reflected through the lens of Mexican culture.
Right.
So yeah, we'll be digging into that next week.
I'm excited for it. All right, and as always, to be continued.
Looks like you've survived another episode. The Frankencast is a production of FCR Media. It's hosted by Anthony Bowman and Eric Velasquez. Follow us on Twitter at The Frankencast, or send us a letter at thefrankencast@gmail.com. Our cover art is by Amanda Keller. You can find her at Keller Illustrations on Instagram. Thanks for listening.